Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hangouts with Visionary Leaders, thoughtful and engaging discussions with visionaries, thought leaders, and change makers that open us to a new narrative for our future, both individually and collectively. In today's episode, we'll be talking about what it means to be a fearless leader in the face of all the change and adversity that we're experiencing on this planet. And my guest is Dr. T.C. North, who is who has written an Amazon best-selling book called Fearless Leaders. I'm your host, Lisa Ingalls, and I'm the founder of Interstate Coaching, where I work with people who are waking up and changing the world, and I do that through my program, The Awakened Visionary, which is a leadership program for conscious business owners who want to make a significant contribution to humanity and this planet. So to get more information about that, you can visit me over my home website, which is www.interstatecoaching.com. So I believe that we've reached a new era of human possibility. Individual as well as collective leadership is absolutely critical as we start to navigate our way through our old and outdated paradigms that no longer serve us in moving towards an expanded life and a freer future. I believe that humanity itself really is on the precipice of a new era of peace, of health, of sustainability, and of prosperity. But the question is, right, will we as a collective choose to commit ourselves to peace and declare an end to this era of disharmony? And will we as a collective turn this potential for possibility into probability? And if so, how do we do this? These are the types of questions that I want to bring to the table and that I do bring to the table in this show. We're really interested in exploring innovative ideas through engaging discussion that can help us to birth a new humanity, to help us birth a new future for ourselves on this planet. This show is all about bringing together visionary leaders to give guidance and support and inspiration as we awaken to our individual and our collective potential. So I see some people starting to flow into our show live here. If you are joining us live, please let us know that you're here. We absolutely love engagement, and the way that you can do that is by leaving a comment below the live broadcast here. Or, you know what, I know that everybody can't watch live. There's a lot of you who are going to be watching this in replay, and the great thing about these Hangouts is that you can still engage with myself and my guest by leaving comments, and we'll get notifications about those comments, and we can continue this very, very important discussion even after this live broadcast. So just saying, we'd love to hear from you. So adapting to the constant change and upheavals that we're experiencing both personally and collectively is, in my opinion, no longer an option. Each of us really does play a role in rewriting the narrative for our future, and that requires us to be fearless leaders. But what does it mean to be a fearless leader? Well, today's guest is an expert amongst experts on this topic. My guest is Dr. T.C. North, and he's the co-author, as I already mentioned, of the Amazon best-selling book, Fearless Leaders. Let me tell you just a little bit about him, and then I'll be bringing him on. For 28 years, he's been a high-performance executive coach and speaker who accelerates individuals and organizations in attaining their visions by becoming fearless leaders. He's been at this for a really, really long time. He's also something that I really connected with him on. He's worked with professional sports teams and professional Olympians as well in this around harnessing their fear in order to become their best. I love that. He's been featured on TV and radio shows. He's a speaker. He's been in business and scientific journals. So what else can I say but welcome to the show, Dr. T.C. North.
Thank you, Lisa. Wow, what an introduction. Can we just travel? Will you come with me wherever I go now?
Yeah, I don't have a problem doing that. I can probably learn a lot from you about
I would love to be introduced.
Want to mentor me? Sure. I'll just be your MC. Come along.
Perfect. I'll pay you whatever you want.
Well, thank you so much for coming to the show. And I know we had some we had the time to connect before this show, not just in the green room, but we were able to connect a couple times. And like I alluded to, we have a lot in common, actually, in the work that we do. But I'm just so fascinated by fearless leaders, because we think of that, and I see this around a lot, oh, be fearless, and then you get these quotes in social media where people like to pin their quotes and all this stuff about being fearless and courageous and all this stuff. But what does fearless really mean? I think that you have a really great definition for fearless. So what is your what does it mean to be fearless? What is fearless to you?
Thank you, Lisa. And all my work, as you know, is about mastering your mind. And when you master your mind, you get to create more of whatever it is you want, whatever is important to you in terms of how you define success. So fearless to me, as you know, I've worked with people who are the best in the world at what they do. I've worked with a lot of people who are literally the best in the world at what they do, or one of the best in the world. And everybody has fear, so nobody's ever going to be truly fearless in terms of not having any fears. That's not how we define it. The goal of being fearless is to master your fears so you know all the fears you have, and instead of them being subconscious or unconscious drivers of your life, which is what most of us are doing every day, we don't even know what fears are driving us. We are conscious of them, that we have them out front, we can see them for what they are, and then we can begin to master them, and we can be in control of the fear versus the fear being in control of us.
Mm-hmm. It's that whole thing of we must be the master of our mind and not let our mind master us. And
Yes.
that is a practice, right? It's not something that it's just a one-time thing. I like to say this a lot. Like, these mastering something isn't just a one-time event. It takes practice. It's something that is, I mean, what's your experience of that? Would you agree, or?
Oh, absolutely. One of the members of my fearless team is a Buddhist monk, and he spent 7 years, meditating in a cave essentially. And I asked him if he really was in a cave. He goes, "TC, it wasn't much different than a cave." And and so in 7 years, 12 to 15 hours a day working on one's mind, he's progressed in a way that I've not witnessed and hardly anybody else that I've come into contact with. And so it's like physical training. You can't go to the gym once and be in shape. Physical training is a lifelong process to stay in shape. And the beauty of training your mind, or mental training, is you don't just keep going back to that same level of maintenance, but when you train your mind, you tend to get better each time. And so you literally can get better into your 60s, 70s, 80s, before the cognitive decline in the brain becomes really apparent. But you can keep training your mind actually longer, and it will respond even better than your body does.
Yeah, that's I think that's one of the most amazing things about the mind. Like you're saying, well into your 70s, 80s, maybe even 90s, we have it's something that we have. Our mind is it can be shaped as long as we're using it and
Oh,
and practice it.
yeah, and the science, the neuroscience that has identified that there's neuroplasticity, which means that the neural networks, the neurons in the mind can continually make new connections. That means you can change a pattern of thinking, or you can learn a new pattern of thinking. But also the really exciting news is that there's actually neurogenesis. And neurogenesis means you can create new neurons. And we used to think, when I was in school, that you couldn't develop new neurons. Whatever you had at a certain age is what you're going to have for life. But now we can find with the functional MRIs, we can actually see neurons being developed at any age. So the old dog can't learn new tricks concept is really a fallacy. We can learn, we can grow, we can change at any age. It just depends on whether we want to or not.
Right. I think that's the key. Want to? Do you want to change?
Yes.
I love the whole neuroscience of it, because, like you said, for a long time it was believed that we were hardwired, that you can't change. But this whole new science of neuroplasticity gives a lot of hope for those of us in the realm of change. And how can you speak a little bit to this? I was going to ask you this later, but might as well ask you it now. What is the neuroscience of changing of that as it applies to fear and being fearless?
Well, so let's look at a couple of different emotions together. Let's look at courage, confidence, and fear as a triangle here.
Okay.
Okay, so first with courage and confidence, we'll do them just linearly. If you think of courage at one end of a spectrum and confidence at the other end of the spectrum, when the times in your life when you're confident, you really don't need courage. The
Right.
times in your life when you're not confident, but you want to do something is when you need courage. So those two are kind of on two ends of the spectrum. A lot of people mush them together, say courage and confidence, and I even put the terms together, but they aren't the same thing. They're actually two ends of the spectrum emotionally. And then how fear relates to them, of course, is when you have fear, you need courage. And when you have fear but you're confident, then the fear usually goes away or it's minimized.
Whoa, that's okay. So for myself and maybe for my viewers, can you re-say that piece and that triangulation, because I think that that's so critical, because I've always thought of courage and confidence going together, but you're saying that they don't go together, that they're two different things.
They're kind of two ends of a spectrum. And so think of, like when I first, I was shy, introverted, and dyslexic. That's sort of who I am in my DNA. And so for me to, the first time I had to do a public presentation, I literally was scared for 6 weeks leading up to that presentation. So I needed a whole lot of courage because I had no confidence that I could present without dying, by the way. You really felt like I was going to die. That's how irrational the brain can be, right?
Right.
And it literally felt that way. If you present, you'll die. And so there I needed a whole lot of courage because I had a whole lot of fear and I had no confidence. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally.
So now, I've given, I don't know how many presentations, hundreds and hundreds, and so now I'm very confident as a presenter. I still get some level of anxiety, but it doesn't control me like it did before, and so my fear factor is way down because my confidence is much higher, and I still need a little courage because I still am the shy, introverted, dyslexic kid at heart.
Okay, great. So how do you work with those things? Which one do you work with first, or do you work with them all together? What do you work with? How do you do
Yeah,
that?
you can work with them separately. So a little bit more on neuroscience, if I may,
Yep.
is this again the neuroscience is so simple now to work with one's mind once you understand it. So if you can see my hands, you can see they're kind of interconnected. This is like the neural network of a brain. All right. So this is a bunch of neurons or a neuron with dendrites attached to another set of neurons or a neuron with dendrites. So this forms a neural network. And all of your memories that are associated with courage, actually any emotion, are linked together in neural networks. So the amazing thing, Lisa, is that if I go into a courageous memory, and these are my courageous, this is where they're held in this neural network, I stimulate this neural network, and it's like stimulating a muscle. Every time that neural network gets stimulated, that courageous neural network, it actually builds thicker, stronger dendrites or neurons with more connections. So it's like multiplying my fingers. So that's how you can train your brain very specifically, is literally by going back and having memories of the emotions you want to be stronger. So if you're always thinking about fearful thoughts, what you're doing is you're making a really strong fearful neural network, and it's going to be hard to overcome that. So you want to go back, and it's as simple as just remembering. So to develop courage, remember a time you're courageous, and how did you think, act, and feel? And those are the three pieces. How did you think? How'd you act? How'd you feel? And you can do that with courage. You can do that with relaxation. You can do that with any emotion you want to become stronger in your mind, because it's literally going in, and it's like choosing which muscle am I going to strengthen today. If I only work this right bicep, that's going to get strong. If I don't work this left bicep, it's not going to get any stronger.
Right.
So it's the same with the brain. What neural network do I want to get stronger? I don't want fear to get stronger, so I'm not going to think about the fearful thoughts.
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I've done a lot of work, and an advanced EFT tapping practitioner, and these days tapping has become pretty widespread, pretty well known, and it works with the same concepts of rewiring those neural networks. Do you use any type of tools like that, like EFT or hypnotherapy or NLP in the work that you're doing?
I've been trained in a lot of those things. Everybody has sort of their favorite. My in-depth work when I work with people in person is EMDR.
Uh-huh.
Eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I was actually one of the first people ever trained in it, and I presented scientific papers on it, and I changed it from just working with post-traumatic stress into high performance. And I use it with all my leaders, all my CEOs, they create a vision, and then we do the EMDR in a positive way of, what's important to create this vision. And you see all the important things, the systems, the people, the PR, the whatever, but they also, the other beauty is, all the things that could block it or stop it or hold it back also come up. And so then we get to work on resolving those both in their minds, if it's in their minds, but also in reality of, how do you need to plan for this, or what system do you want to put in place to account for this so it doesn't hold you back.
Yeah. So I want to take this, we sort of set the stage around the fear and the courage and the confidence, and I want to take this conversation and direct it into the theme of the series of this season for the show, which is innovation, and have you speak into how fear plays a part in innovation.
Yeah, great. So it's really interesting when you asked me that question when we chatted on the phone, and my first reaction was, fear blocks innovation, and I think that's the obvious answer, and it's true. So again, the neuroscience of that is, under fear with anxiety, you release cortisol, and cortisol is a hormone. When you release cortisol, it actually blocks this part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is also called the executive brain. It's where you do your highest level of thinking. So it's hard to be creative if you don't have the most advanced part of your brain available to be creative with. So fear literally blocks it through hormone release of cortisol and blocks the use of the executive brain. And then the other side of that is, when I was thinking about it, so that was the more obvious answer to me. The less obvious was, well, fear can, if you control it, can also create creative solutions, because this is a weird example. If you think about wartime, wartime resources are low, and you have to think about creative ways to do things very fast. Unfortunately, they're usually destructive, but the fear of being hurt or killed, or your country falling to another country, using that fear to create something out of necessity, as long as you're not immobilized by the fear and the release of cortisol, once you're past that, it actually gives you the motivation to be creative.
And I think that some people would definitely say that they're motivated by fear around things. Like I've talked to business owners who will say, to some degree, fear motivates me to be better, and that's how my company has become so successful. I think that that's interesting, because I don't I don't operate in that way, but it speaks to what you're talking about. It taps into the necessity to be creative.
Yeah, and and I work with entrepreneurs too, and I hear that a lot. And if the fear, it depends on how big the fear is. Again, are you in control of it, or is it in control of you? And that's a fine balance. If it's in control of you, then it's going to hurt you. If you're aware of your fear and you have it out here and you go, there it is, I'm afraid to fail. If I fail, my family doesn't eat. We could starve to death. Well, probably not reality, but that's the fear with entrepreneurs. It's good to have it out there. Then it's energy. Fear has energy. Mm-hmm. So if you can use that energy, and so here's another one, since you like my continuum of emotions, I love continuums, and I tend to think that way. Fear and excitement are, in a way, the same emotion. It's like two poles of the battery. The fear is the negative pole and the excitement's the positive pole, but it's a lot of energy of fear and excitement. And when I talk about peak performance, I always look at that, and you're an athlete, what's it take to get in the flow state? What's it take to be your best? And it's actually a little bit of a blend. It's that blend of fear and excitement, where there's more excitement than fear, but it's actually a blend.
Yeah, yeah, and I know from, like you said, my background is in athletics and competing. That I don't know. It's interesting because for me, the fear thing. I think I was lucky, actually. I was blessed. And somehow I landed on a team. Cross country was my thing, and our coach, one of our things that we had to do every week was the mental work. Like, that was a part. And in the 80s, I think that was rather forward thinking for a high school track and cross country coach, was to say, okay, my team is gonna, we dedicated one of our practices per week of doing the mental work. But it was phenomenal for me because I would get so freaking nervous before competitions, and learning how to harness that energy. Like you said, if you're focusing on the fear, you're just going to get more fearful. And I did it through visualization early on, but I think that it evolved for me how I ended up working with the fear. But I'm curious how you've spoken to that one of the ways to master fear is to bring up thoughts of courage and confidence and reinforce those, so that you reinforce those neural networks. Is there any other way, or do you have other ways of working with and mastering fear as well?
Yeah, and this one's in the book in two pieces, but I really like doing it together. A six-step process to master fear, and this has been so effective. And this is, I really like simple but profoundly effective techniques, and this is in that category. So one is you have to identify your fears, and we've talked a little bit about that. And I promise everybody who's listening, we all have more fears than we know. And so, when people start working with me, I always tell them, or if I'm doing a workshop, as we're going along, the bad news is you're going to, find that you have a lot more fears than you thought you had. But the good news is once you know you have them, then you can actually do something with them. So step one is really an identification process. And we have all kinds of terms for fear. We call them anxiety. We call them stressed out. We call them all kinds of things. But underneath all of those kinds of things is fear. So just identify it. Fear of what? So that's step one. Step two is embrace it. And the embrace is the fear behind you in your subconscious mind, or can you have it out front and see it for what it is, and sometimes even draw a picture of it, or give it a voice, or give it a name. I was working with a group of realtors a couple weeks ago, and we're going through this quickly, and at the end I asked people to talk about their experience, and this one realtor goes, dang, I got a lot more work than I thought. It's like, I heard a voice. It was my grandmother's voice. and I won't go into the depths of what the grandmother had said and done, but that was creating a fear for her. It was being carried in her subconscious. So we got all kinds of stuff like that. So that's the embrace piece. And then the third step is to disidentify with fear. And again, the editors took this out of the book, but I think it's actually the best term for it. So disidentify means, it's a term I stole from Eckhart Tolle, and I don't know if he took it from somebody else, but I really like the term. It means fear is not me, I am not fear.
Right.
It is not my identity. And people say I'm a worrier, I'm fearful. That sounds like that's who you are. It's not. You weren't born that way. It's something, it's learned. All fear is learned, except for a few innate fears, like fear of spiders, snakes, and heights are good examples of innate. It's in our DNA. Other than that, they're all learned, which means they're all can be unlearned. So that's step three. Step four is, what is the worst case scenario? And this is so powerful. So let's take the entrepreneur example, because we both heard this one. I'm afraid my business is going to fail. So what's the fear underneath that? Well, that means I can't feed my family. What's the fear under that? Well, that means I could lose my house. What's the fear associated with that? That means we can't eat, and I don't have a house. We're going to be living under a bridge. What's the reality of that?
Right.
With a smart person? But see, that's really the fear. It's not just about losing the business, it's that my family's going to be living under the bridge in a cardboard box.
Yeah.
And it's an unrealistic fear. And when you get people, if you take them down to that level, they see, okay, what's the probability of that? Which is the next step, is what's the probability? Um, and it usually gets really close to zero. And if it's close to zero, it's like, do I really want to be spending all my energy on something that's probably never going to happen?
Yeah,
And it just
and then it
dissipates.
becomes a choice, right? When you get to that point, it becomes a choice. Like, do I want to keep this fear? Because now you've become so conscious of it, and you've done so many iterations of that questioning down. You can ask yourself, is that something that I really want to continue to believe? And when you're in that position, then you become in control, and you take power over that fear. From what I'm
Yeah,
hearing you say.
yeah. Yeah, it does feel powerful to be in control of your fear instead of it being at a subconscious level in control of you. Now, there are some pretty bad worst case scenarios. I've done a lot of work with Winter Olympians, freestyle skiers, downhill skiers. What is the worst case scenario of those guys?
Right, yeah, well, pretty big, because I mean, what if they crash,
Yeah,
break their
worst case,
neck?
exactly. Worst case scenario is they die.
Yeah,
Most of us, we're afraid of our jobs. We're afraid of losing a relationship. It's like, nobody's going to die here. They actually have to deal with fear of death, and it's a rational fear because it is part of their sport. People die, and so when you have something like that, when I work with elite athletes, the winter athletes, they have to be fully aware of the dangers, but then they have to come to peace with them and accept what is the risk they're willing to take. And then once they make that decision, set it aside and focus on, which is the sixth step, what do they want? Lindsey Vonn, who up until recently was, our great, well, she still is the greatest woman skier in United States history. Didn't have a good world championships this year, but Lindsey Vonn is known for always choosing the straightest line down a downhill course. And you're going 80, 90 miles an hour, and people don't realize this, but they actually water down these courses so they're pure ice and make them fast. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know that. I had no clue
Yeah.
that.
Y- Yeah, they actually take out hoses and water down these courses so they'll be faster. And so they're skiing. If you really listen now, next time if you ever listen to a ski race, you'll hear it. You can hear the sound of ice on the skis. It's not snow. And so you're falling at 89, 90 miles an hour on ice. And she picks the straightest line and she knows she's going to blow out sometimes. She accepts the risk. She's blowing out her knee 2 years in a row, and she had a concussion last year, but she accepts those risks.
Wow,
Most of us don't have to.
then you really see, as you're talking about this, and these athletes who are putting themselves in these situations where it's a much higher probability for injury, let alone death, that they really have to have courage and confidence.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where you have to be able to set aside the fear because you want to be confident. And that's really important. This is where you want to be confident. You want to be, so back to the Lindsey Vonn example, when she picks her line, you'll see her before a race doing what you did. She will then visualize it, and she'll imagine skiing that course exactly the way she wants to, and she's programming her mind and body. She'll go over it and over it and over it as many times as she can before a race to program in her body, because you don't have time to think. It's all got to be reaction in your body because things happen so fast.
Right. I'm going to pull up a comment here from the audience. Marcus had a question for you. He says that sometimes people let themselves be paralyzed. Oops, let me bring it up to the screen. Sometimes people let themselves be paralyzed by their fear. What would you tell these people in order to help them overcome this situation?
Oh, Marcus, complicated question. First of all, somebody who's paralyzed by fear, I have to know whether they're essentially emotionally healthy or not. Because if you're not emotionally healthy, the stuff I'm sharing with you as an audience right now is really meant for people who are essentially pretty strong, pretty healthy. I worked in clinical psychology for a long time. These techniques they'll help somebody who has emotional, true difficulties, medical difficulties, but they're not for them. So first of all, I have to separate out that group. So if I'm paralyzed with fear, I'll use my own story of my first time being asked to do public speaking. One is I just made a commitment to an action, which was to do a presentation to 6 people in a running store. And so making one small, and even better than that is because that was a full action of actually putting myself in the situation. But anytime you can break the cycle of being frozen by getting in motion, that will help, and make it better small than large.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense to me. When you say put it in motion, can you give a little more clarity on that piece?
Yeah, so let's say you wanted to write a book. A lot of people want to write a book. They say, I got a book in me. That's a big project. So take one action. You can go get a book on how to write a book, or read an article on how to write a book. Get something on how to start. You don't even have to start. Just get something to learn how to start. And that's what I did. When I wanted to write my book, is I started reading articles, and I read a book on how to write a book. And I talked with people who had written books. What'd you do? And I hadn't started writing it. I took about 6 months just to figure out what's the process to write a book.
Yeah, and it's in those little steps that we find it's not as scary. That fear, what you're saying is those little steps, it overcomes the bigger fear because you're making little progress steps.
Yeah, it builds momentum. It actually builds confidence. So if I'm successful at one small step, now I'm more confident than I was before that step. And so those pieces of confidence just can keep building on each other, and pretty soon you're doing big chunks of whatever it is you want to be doing.
Right. Interesting. So I want to refer back to something that you were talking about, and then also bring this back into the innovation. One of your, I think you said it was the 6 steps that you shared, is to embrace the fear. And I think that that's counterintuitive for a lot of people to I don't want to embrace it. I want to get rid of it. I just want to throw it in the trash can, get rid of it, get as far away from it as possible. But can you speak to the value? Because I believe that there's a huge value in the acknowledgement and voicing of it before, because then the next piece is, okay, now you can disidentify with it. But speak to that. Why would you first embrace it?
Yeah, great. Because if you don't embrace it, you're afraid of the fear. Now you've got fear of the fear. And it's a really ugly cycle of having the fear of the fear of the fear of the fear of the fear. Where's that end?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, if you just get it out, it's usually not as bad as you think. And it almost always is not as bad as you think. And what's really fun is to have people draw it or give it a voice or give it a name, and just go, okay, I get what it is, and I actually get where it comes from now. And the more information you have, the more the fear dissipates. It's just now what it is. You're not making it bigger than it is. Right.
Got it. Yeah, I never thought of that. Then you start to have the fear of the fear of the fear of the fear of the. Yeah. It's like a total, an unending spiral that you can really get caught in.
Okay, we're not going to put that in the scientific journal. I can't prove the fear of the fear of the fear of the fear because I don't know where that one ends. But at least the fear of the fear.
So one of your success secrets is to act with inspiring courage and have the courage to fail in order to succeed. So can you share with us a little bit more about your thoughts on the success secret as it relates to innovation?
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes from the book is, the road to success is filled with the potholes of failure. And so if you want to innovate, you have to be willing to have lots of failures along the way. again, we're at a percentages game here, and the first thing you try usually isn't the perfect innovation. So you have to be willing to try lots of stuff, and entrepreneurs are famous. Let's throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks, and whatever sticks, we'll keep doing that. And so it's kind of built into the processes of innovation is you have to be willing to fail in order to succeed. And when I use the term fail, I'd like to spend a moment on that because this is an important concept, failure, and how I deal with failure, how we deal with failure. When I talk with people who are the best in the world or one of the best in the world about failure, they're all pretty comfortable with having failed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They've all failed a lot. And they understand how valuable that's been for them to get where they have gotten to because they have done a great job of learning from those failures. The other thing I learned was really startling. So Kathy Greenberg is my co-author, and Kathy and I discovered, and we have very different audiences. She works with Navy SEALs, and she does a lot of work with special operations and military, as well as with business leaders, and I work with business leaders and elite athletes. And what was really interesting, Lisa, was that the people who are the best at what they do, they use the same term for failure. They didn't call them failures, they called them setbacks.
Mm.
And they just, I mean, I actually had, I wrote an article, The New F Word in Business, because
I like that.
I know, it was a very popular title, as you can imagine. It was #1 ranked for a long time when I published it, because it was a great title. But it came from this fear of failure, because one of the guys I interviewed, Jeremy Bloom, he literally couldn't say the word. He said, I love, and he got stuck on the F word, on F. So that's why I called it the F word. And he said, I don't see them as failures. I see them as setbacks. And I love setbacks. And he went on to explain that he loves setbacks because, if whatever you're doing, your competitors are having to face the same challenges you are. And his perspective was, okay, so when and he's now a very successful businessman. He was a successful athlete. Now, I as a businessman, when I run into this problem, and it doesn't work out the first time I try, or the second time, or our team, tries it and doesn't work out. It's like, isn't that great? Because I know all my competitors are struggling with the same thing. The challenge is who's going to solve it. And if we're the ones that solve it, we're the ones that go forward fast.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually loved running into setbacks.
Yeah, and those setbacks, as he just reframed failure as a setback, or Tony Robbins talks about it's not failure, it's just feedback. Like, okay, well, that didn't work, so now what's the next thing? And I think that those two that's the fear of failure, right? People are afraid to fail. So if we can reframe failure, then the fear can be disassociated with it in a way, I guess.
Yeah, if you frame what we call failure is just, it's a setback, it's the learning opportunity. The Chinese write in symbols, and the Chinese symbol for crisis is a combination of fear and opportunity. And so, if the crisis is what didn't work out, do you focus on the fear or do you focus on the opportunity?
Right.
And people who become really great, they always focus on the opportunity, not on the fear.
Right. Yeah. So I have another comment I want to bring up here, who's someone who's a friend of yours, I believe.
Marion.
Marion is here. She said, I literally passed out on the hotel stage during my first paid speech. Wow. Okay. I had another talk 2 weeks later. I learned how to rehearse seeing people loving what I was sharing rather than seeing people criticizing me. That went a long way in helping me to be able to be in front of them in the room again, although I was still anxious. Years later, after publishing my first book, Dr. North helped me to get beyond the constant background fear of fainting so I could share what I was so passionate about.
Oh, hi, Marion. That's great to hear. Yeah, my friend out in Kauai. Yeah, she did, and it was an honor to help Marion because she's an amazing woman with an amazing book, Revolutionary Agreements, by the way. And I think you've had Marion on your show.
Yeah, she's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks. So, yeah, we'll get her here talking. Well,
Oh, good. Oh, people, please listen to Marion. Oh, I love her work. It's awesome. So,
okay.
can I go off of that for a moment?
Yes.
You know, I do a lot of work with high-end salespeople,
Hmm.
and um, when I did I did a CD program called Blast Through Fear probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I really wanted I broke it down into four segments, and I wanted to look at fear of selling as one of those four segments. And so I spent a lot of time, researching what are all the pieces of fear of selling. There's, fear of embarrassment. I'm going to say the wrong thing. Fear of failure, fear of success. It's like every fear imaginable seemed to be tied into fear of selling. And then when I really looked at it, because remember I love simple things, probably because I'm a guy and that's all I can handle, right? I gave you that one.
I didn't say it. You said
Yeah,
it.
I'm a guy. I can do that. So I love really simple things, and when I looked at all fear of selling, it came down to if you want to resolve them, there's one easy way to do it. Focus on the other person. Because all fears of selling, whether it's selling my message from the stage, like Marion, or selling the message, to a peer group, or selling a message to my boss, or selling the value to a company in a job interview, or selling a product or service, if you're selling to somebody else, you're supposed to be focused on them. If you're in fear, you're focused on you. You're not afraid, never afraid for them. You're always afraid for you.
Hmm.
So I came up with this mantra that people really love in these circumstances where from being on stage to sort of product sales, love them and serve them. And create that mindset. I'm focused on you. Just let myself feel love for you, whoever you is in that moment, the person I'm selling to, the crowd I'm speaking with, and serve them. That's what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
Selling is a love them and serve them process. And that takes, it either minimizes the anxiety or it just, if you're truly in it, it takes it away. Because I can't be focused on you and be afraid for me at the same time.
Well, don't you think that selling and the fear of selling is around the fear of, has some fear behind it of being rejected, the fear of someone saying no to you?
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, that's real big.
So how do you deal with that in the fear of rejection? I mean, we're going off of the fear of failure, but that is failing because you're being rejected and now you're failing to serve because, you can get into this whole loop, right?
Yeah, and you said it perfectly, the way that most people say it, which is not accurate. That I am failing because they didn't want to buy whatever it is I just offered. My favorite example is, watch wait people and, service people in restaurants. If they offer you an hors d'oeuvre and you don't accept it, do they get hurt? If they offer you coffee and you don't accept it, do they get their feelings hurt because you rejected them? If they offer you, all the delicious desserts and you go, no, I'm really trying to count my calories, I don't not having dessert, do they go home and cry? No.
Yeah, it's a good.
It's not about you. It's about somebody doesn't want whatever that offer was. So that's the it's kind of like the disidentify.
Don't take it
What you're
personally.
offering is not you. Even with a professional service, I offer coaching services. I'm right for some people and I'm not right for others. And I get that. I've been doing this 28 years. And so, all I'm going to do is offer how I think I can serve you. And if we don't think, or you don't think, or I don't think it works, then it doesn't work, and I'm okay with that now because
Yeah,
it's not who I am.
right. Yeah, that's
It's just
great.
what I do.
Yeah. So, as we're wrapping up our show for today, what final thoughts do you have on fearless leaders being innovative?
Well, so I loved what you said your mission was at the beginning, and what you think, where the world is and where you think we need to go. I thought that was just really awesome, and I didn't get a chance to say that, so I wanted to say that was really awesome. And it's, I think, what really has connected us, because me and the team that I've trained, and I'm going to be certifying more people in the Fearless Leaders concepts, techniques, and the Fearless Leader secrets. Our mission is simple. Our mission is to raise the vibration of leaders globally. And raise the vibration is literally, which part of your brain are you in? Are you in this fearful part, or are you in this higher part up here, which can, be more mindful of, the world at large, at the planet at large, or beyond the planet even, and when you're making your decisions about your business or what you're doing with your life. So, my final thought is, fearless leaders act with inspiring courage. They react with resilience. They're mindset masters. They always have control of how they think and what their emotions are in their most important moments. And they think with mindfulness, and they excel with unrelenting fire. And so to be innovative, all those qualities will help you be innovative.
Beautiful. And your book, Fearless Leaders, can you tell our audience where they can get your book as well as where they can get in touch with you?
Yes, you can get the book directly from Amazon. Also, if you go to my website, which I think is on the screen, the home page of the website, you'll see an image of the book. Click on that, and it'll describe the book. Then, if you want the book, you can just click the buy button and go to Amazon and purchase it there. It's all through Amazon. It's on Kindle and softcover. Very inexpensive, $9.99 on Kindle. What a deal! And if you want to get in contact with me, please just email me. It's my name, tc@tcnorth.com. tc@tcnorth.com.
Wonderful. Well, I got the book, so I'm highly recommending the book to everybody out there. It's a wonderful book. Wonderful. Actually, TC, I have a client who I was talking to today, and he owns a company, and I told him that he needed to get the book for all of the leaders in his company. So I'm highly recommending TC's book, Fearless Leader. It's on Amazon.
Thank you.
You can get it in paperback or Kindle version, right? Because I have it in Kindle.
Yeah, paperback or Kindle.
Right.
Yeah, there's no hardcover.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much, TC, for taking the time to be here today and sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge with our audience today.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for the alignment of our missions and serving the people of this planet.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I want to thank everybody else who showed up here live today, took the time out of your Tuesday afternoon to show up live and be with us here today. We really appreciate it. Let's continue this discussion. If you have any questions for Dr. T.C. North, please feel free to leave them in the comments section below this video, because this will be the replay page. You'll also see this replay in YouTube as well, so you can leave comments there. We'll be able to get your comments and respond back to them there. So to end this show off, I just want to say that it is my belief that each of us has the capacity within us to be a visionary. Each of us has an inner calling to contribute to the greater good. I really do believe that, whether that means it's in our family, in our community, or on this planet. And I hope that what we were able to talk about today in Fearless Leadership gave you some insights around being a visionary leader in your world. And I hope that you'll be back for our next episode. And as I close out, last thing is, please do subscribe to our show. And you can do that at www.interstatecoaching.com/visionary leaders. And until next week, we'll see you all then, and have a wonderful rest of your week, everyone.